Ladies and gentlemen, we've got another session now here at the ACHL digital event. Got two characters here, and one of them I've got to be very careful how I announce him because of something that happened earlier, which we won't share. However, the first person we've got, our first guest, is Stewart Angus, Divisional Senior Vice President, International Airport Operations and Associated Companies, Dnata. At this point, Stewart, I'd love to say what I was going to say by accident, but I won't. So welcome on board.
Thanks, Chris.
And we've also got Wally Devereaux, Managing Director, Cargo and Charters for Southwest Airlines Cargo. Welcome, Wally.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Right, great. Now, really appreciate you both coming on. And obviously what we're doing is we're focusing on crisis to care and having a genuine collaboration and initiatives as the basis for how we get out of this damn pandemic and also maybe lessons learned for the future. So what I'd like to start with is just on a personal note, both of you as leaders and parties responsible for your organisations and what's going on at the moment, what sort of positive experiences have you had as a result of this crisis, and what learnings have you had as leaders? So maybe if I start with you, Stewart.
Yeah, I think, thanks, Chris. I think one thing going into the crisis, it was clear there was a lot of uncertainty. So one of the things that I've done and you know, the whole organisation done is really focus on communication with our teams and with customers too. But you know, realising that people will be very nervous about what's happening, so it's important to communicate. So in a strange way, I think our communication has been better than ever, particularly as we went into lockdown and you think, oh my gosh, we're not going to see anyone. People are going to start feeling you know, strange, they're at home. So we actually almost over-communicated, and particularly as an international business. And now this whole concept that the way to manage an overseas business is to get on a plane and visit people just seems really, really strange now. And the communication we've set up, I'd say, has been better than ever, which was a strange learning I didn't expect.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And also, Stewart, I think there's also been an announcement, isn't it, that you're bringing everybody back on now as of October.
That was about our pay cuts.
Correct.
Yes. Yeah, so we've been on 50% pay cut for 6 months as our sort of personal contribution. And thankfully, that's restored thankfully from a personal perspective. Yeah. That's coming back from October.
Okay, but that's good also as a recognition of what everybody did as a result of supporting the organisation. And
yeah, and you know, remembering, actually, I think all of us have probably worked harder than we've ever worked in our lives.
Yeah, I can imagine. But that's a good sign. And Wally, from your perspective?
Well, you know, I like what Stewart said there about communication, and I would say that's absolutely true. We have really amped up the amount of communication that we have shared with, you know, not only maybe from me and from the leadership team within our department at Southwest, but also, you know, from the CEO and chairman, Gary Kelly, on down. So Gary, for example, has done an excellent job doing video recordings, you know, every week or every other week to the entire Southwest Airlines team, trying to answer the most common questions that folks have been asking. And a lot of that, you know, Stewart really mentioned it, around uncertainty and just kind of this underlying stress of all of the different things that are happening to folks right now. Communication has been absolutely critical. I think the other thing, and I don't want to just necessarily jump right on what Stewart is sharing, but along those same lines, you know, we certainly have figured out how to do the virtual work thing to a degree, and I think in some ways we've been more focused and more efficient just because we've kind of had to have been, and so with the communication and then just kind of the efficiency that we've gained, I think just from everybody understanding the intensity and the critical nature of the situation. I think we've just been able to move certain things faster for some reason, which has been a bit of a surprise to me. You know, you think about a lot of the plans that we had. We, you know, everybody had a plan coming into this year, and kind of like Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. And so, you know, we've been able to adjust the plan and then also execute, which has really been something that I've certainly taken a lot of pride in, with our team being able to accomplish some pretty significant projects and goals over this time that I really didn't think maybe we would be able to do. So those have been two positives.
It's amazing, isn't it, how things can change and how people's opinions can change and mindset, etc. So it's a definite one as an eye opener with regards to working from home and doing what we're doing now. I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it certainly has. And just, you know, some of these projects that we've been working on, you know, have been across multiple departments and, you know, multiple stakeholders that have multiple, you know, different priorities and things going on. And yet we've been able to kind of move an agenda along on the cargo side that's been exciting, and it just, you know, in my opinion. So that's been good.
Yeah, no, exactly. Now, Stuart, obviously cargo has had its profile heightened probably more in the last 6 months than it has in the last God knows how many years. I mean, it's now seen as an integral and a necessary part of everybody's business, and also the public have had their eyes opened as well to how important logistics is. Now, with that comes the airport relationship. Now, I think now is the best time ever for airports to start taking a leading role in their own ecosystem and their own communities in collaboration with the carrier and the GHA and everybody else in there, so that airports become an attractive option because of the efficiencies and the learnings and the experiences that they've had as a result of this. You feel that's the way that things are going to map out now?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you reflect backwards, you know, we forget sometimes because we're completely embedded in our industry, you know, 14 hours a day. But sometimes I felt that in the eyes of the government, in the eyes of the airport, the air cargo industry was almost invisible.
Yeah.
And it was certainly second fiddle to the passenger business. And that's reflected in slot shortages at busy airports. It's reflected in the ability or inability to get space for new cargo development.
Yeah.
And I think given what's happened in the last 6 months, I think there's probably quite a few airport operators out there who are thinking, I wish we'd invested more in cargo. And as so I think with the airport operators, that's absolutely the case. But I think in terms of government and general profile, we've been trying to refer to our workers as key workers.
Yep.
And if anything, I am in some ways a little bit disappointed because, you know, let's say, you know, I'm British, so let's take UK as an example. There's been a lot of recognition of key workers, and of course the medical workers, but also the truck drivers and you know, the shop workers. These are the guys who kept going through the lockdown, but so did our guys.
Yeah.
Our guys were doing it at 10 o'clock at night, unloading freighters.
Yeah.
And you know, I wish we had more recognition than we do, but it's certainly a huge step forward. And I think also from the airport perspective, there's a real, you know, I think most airports have a sense of being, you know, a role in the community.
Yep.
And, you know, we're the guys who are offloading masks, ventilators, you know, drugs, whatever, you know, which really was absolutely essential to those countries. If you go back to where we were in April, May.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's good. And Wally?
Well, so just the question around I guess the airports being a little more engaged in the cargo side of the house. That's kind of where we're going here, right? Yeah. So, you know, we're with Southwest Airlines. We're primarily a U.S. domestic carrier. We don't always operate in all of the largest hub airports. So in some cases, for example, our hometown here in Dallas, we're at Love Field versus DFW. But we have, you know, I think we generally speaking, I feel like we are pretty well supported by the airport community and have been historically, just in the U.S. domestic market more so. That's not always the case, but I think in a lot of the airports that we tend to operate in, because we in some cases are the largest or maybe only cargo provider in some of those airports, we've historically been pretty well supported by the airport community. So, but you walk into the world today, and certainly airports are recognizing even more so that cargo is critical, and it's always critical, but it's it's absolutely critical right now. It's a good thing for the airport and the carriers and the ground handlers.
Yeah, no, exactly. Now, as far as agility and resilience, okay, so that's something now that people are looking into a lot more, and I'm pretty sure both of your organisations have got a greater appreciation of QHS S&E and the guys that were doing risk assessments, etc. Now, I mean, if there is, and my personal opinion, I'm not suggesting it's yours, but my personal opinion is that there is going to be a second wave, and especially for the Northern Hemisphere coming into the winter months, and it's going to be high impact. It's possibly going to be different, but it's going to require an awful lot more of collaboration and effective support from each other. What do you both think? What do you think is going to happen, and how well prepared do you feel you are for those challenges that are coming? So we start with you, Wally.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to adjust here slightly on my headphones, so I apologize.
No, don't worry. Agility and resilience, innovation, creativity. Don't worry about it.
Hey, Stewart, do you mind taking that first one, that question first, and then I'll jump in? I apologize.
No
yes. Sorry, Chris. You just summarise that again.
Yeah. So basically, my opinion is that there's definitely going to be a second wave. Now, whether it's going to be of similar impact or it's going to have similar issues, because everybody's learnt certain things from the first one.
Yeah.
Now, if there is, how well equipped are both organisations, and how much focus do you put now on, risk assessments and the speed at which you have to do things? Do you segregate your workforces so that they're in 14 or 21-day rotations in case of quarantine or infection? All those sort of issues that we've come to understand from the first wave.
Yeah, I think one thing I would say was one thing that I've I say surprised, I shouldn't have been surprised, was the agility and resilience of our teams around the world, to react so quickly to changing circumstances in terms of, let's say, introduction of the hygiene measures, of actually, it's very easy to say social distancing, but that's really hard when you're unloading a freighter.
Exactly.
And to get that to work, and the risk assessments, for example, around how to unload cabin loaded cargo on a wide body. We got those risk assessments done with all the departments involved in like 48 hours.
Yeah.
That would normally have taken us weeks, probably.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So it's amazing what you can do when you have to. And I think we've really learned that. And I think going into, if there is a second wave, I think a lot of the work has been done, and therefore I think we'll be much better placed for that. I think the big challenge is from a government perspective, how will the government react when, if or when the numbers do go up again?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Because, I like to think to some extent the reaction which we had of closing down economies and everything was partly because we didn't know what we were dealing with. Now we know much more about this virus, which types of people it affects.
Yep.
How it affects, and therefore we can work around it much more than when we were blind. And of course, the amount of testing, the amount of hospital facilities have all increased. So our ability to manage it is that much better, I think, going forward than when we knew nothing about it.
Yeah. And what you both said about communication, and you just touched on the fact that if you're unloading a freighter, if you're doing that, it's very difficult to maintain the social distancing. So the mitigation, i.e. the mask and the constant washing, etc., that's the way around it. And people need to understand that and not be fearful of it. And it's that disciplined set of you must that needs to be put across. And I've come across a few areas and airports where you've got several GHAs. Some of them continually support the PPE from the masks, etc. But others say that it hasn't been scientifically proven, so it's up to the individual. And as soon as you give that option, my feeling is that you don't get anywhere.
Well, we have a responsibility to our staff.
Exactly.
That's, I mean, it's not for me or you to try and second guess the science on this.
Exactly.
And I'd rather be cautious on it.
Exactly.
But and I saw some numbers recently on I can't remember the numbers, I won't quote them, but the amount of masks and sanitizers, etc., that we bought for our staff, but it's a necessary cost. It's the way it is.
Yep, duty of care. Yep.
Yeah.
Wally?
Yeah, well, so from an agility standpoint, I do think we, if this were to happen and we were to have another wave of this, I do think we are better positioned to at least operationally react to that. And I think the organizations are maybe again to Stewart's point, we've had an opportunity to kind of work through this once now, so we're better positioned to that. And I think the other thing, it's an obligation not only to our employees but also to our customers. When you think about things like masks and plexiglass shields and social distancing and warehouse and lobby management and all of those kinds of things. But thankfully, if I think back to when this all happened, and Stewart, I think you'd probably agree, the intensity and the pace of change and that as everything was happening was almost, it was breathtaking. It was overwhelming. And so all of these questions had to be answered quickly, and all of the guidance and all of these things were changing. And now at least we're a little more stable. We kind of have a process in place as to how we're handling it, and that can obviously continue to evolve. But we're in a much better position to be able to react to it now versus where we were in March.
Exactly. Now, one of the things that people are already talking about now is the vaccine. When and what sort of temperatures and all the usual questions. I think one of the bigger issues now is we know it's coming, so it's not going to be like the iPhones and everything. But as far as airports, carriers, and GHAs collaborating together to identify what the capacities are at certain airports once it gets there, because there's probably going to be the need for a lot more storage. Because the logistics won't flow as quickly as one would like. How well prepared are you both along those lines?
Well, just in terms of being prepared to assist with the vaccine and the movement of the vaccine, that's certainly it's a top priority for us. If you think about the current market here, we're really running these peak season e-commerce volumes. Then you're going to go into peak season with all of this additional volume, most likely on top of that, and with maybe a little bit of limited capacity. And then you potentially could be moving goods as early as November, depending upon who you listen to and what you hear. So it's really going to be important for the entire supply chain to have a seat at the table here to provide capacity and to help. I'm going to apologize. I have crazy things going on in my house, and if you can hear all this, I apologize. But in the background. But anyway, that's the beauty of a virtual call, I guess.
That's it.
But
real life.
But anyway, it's just so I think we're prepared for that. we have a lot of capacity to offer, and everybody's going to have to step up and participate, I think.
Okay, yeah. And Stewart?
Yeah, it sounds very calm in your house, Wally. Don't worry.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, look, we're going very much through a planning process in Dnata at most of the key cargo points to ensure that we can meet this demand when it happens. Now, of course, one of the challenges is we don't know where the flows are going to be, because normally with pharma, you kind of know where the production's going to be, and that's kind of agreed a year in advance. But we don't know where this is going to come from. So there's going to be thinking on our feet, but I've just signed off this week more capex. We are investing in cool chain capacity in a number of airports. The challenge of it, of course, is we are investing millions of dollars in capex, and it's something that you might only need for a certain amount of time. But there again, I think we are going to need that capacity as well. And going forward, it's difficult to underestimate the extent of the airlift. And I use the word airlift, deliberately, because it's almost like we almost feel we have a kind of a humanitarian responsibility here.
Yeah.
And, and I'm saying to my teams, look, we do not want to be the guys who screw up on the delivery of the first vaccine shipment to a country.
Exactly.
And all the press, when these vaccines come, the press are going to be waiting at the airports for these vaccines to arrive. It's going to be huge news. Yeah. And we have got to get it right. Yeah. Not just for our sakes, but for the sake of our airline customers.
Yeah, and I think the sad thing is, Stuart, from the press perspective, instead of them wanting to celebrate success, they're anticipating the first failure to make big news of it, which is...
Of course. That's why the press will be there.
No, it's such a shame. It's such a shame.
Yeah.
Now, Wally, one of the things that I just want to ask you as well is the representative and regulatory bodies have become enablers over the last 5-6 months and not blockers as they may have been known prior. I think it's been exceptional what they've done. EASA, ICAO, IATA, they've all done a great job in supporting now the efficiency and speed of decision making. Have you witnessed that firsthand?
Sure, I think we have. It's been maybe a little less relevant in some ways for Southwest Airlines in terms of what we do, but you have seen the regulatory bodies become very aggressive as it relates to guidance around passenger freighters and those kinds of things, which has been a great move, I think, that the industry has taken. And so I think the regulatory bodies in general, and this is going to be my opinion from a cargo perspective here, have done a nice job under the circumstances, providing the necessary support as quickly as possible. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's been anything that they've necessarily missed along the way. They're all struggling just like we are to move as fast as they can, and I think they've done a nice job.
Yeah, and Stuart, from your perspective?
Yeah, funnily enough, I'd say exactly the same as Wally. I think the regulatory authorities have done, they've done what they needed to do, and they've acted quickly. It's interesting because we have an operation at Heathrow, Heathrow is a very challenging airport. Lots and lots of different bodies involved, always a challenging airport. And I'm actually talking more on the passenger side. And I remember when the Olympics were in London in 2012, and everyone was going, how's Heathrow going to cope with the Olympics? Yeah. And the service levels across the airport, I'm not just talking about handling, were better than they ever were. Yeah. And the reason was everyone pulled together.
Yep.
The authorities, security, customs, the handlers, everyone gave it 100%. And I'm almost kind of sensing that's really what's happened over the last 6 months as well. This crisis has been so severe that in many ways, the authorities have kind of, everyone's stepped up in a way.
And together with one focus, which is one of the positive things, which, touch wood, will continue long after this damn crisis.
Yeah, you hope that will be a legacy.
Yep. Legacy of caring. Now, gentlemen, digitalization, okay, and in cargo, that's been an ongoing discussion for God knows how long, and I think I can't remember the the chain of people that have come and gone at conferences saying, when are we going to get rid of the paper? When are we going to get rid of the paper? But surely now, from a hygiene perspective, the amount of times that people have to come in contact with airway bills and attached documentation, it's ridiculous now in this day and age. So surely now there should be a strong voice from the community, from the business, to say enough's enough. A decision has to be made at such and such a period of time, and this is what's going to happen. What do you think, Wally?
Yeah, I certainly would agree. If there was ever if you ever needed some additional support for the rationale of electronic data transmission and removing paper from the process, this is certainly it. So it can be added to any business case that exists out there to say, we need to reduce the amount of paper in the process. We need to reduce the transaction times in cargo facilities, and anything that we can do along those lines is necessary and needed, and more so than even it has been. And for us, we continue to try to make as much progress as we can in the world of electronic airway bills and advanced bookings and those kinds of things. Now, again, we're a little bit different because we're in this U.S. domestic marketplace, but it's certainly a priority, and certainly more so now than it ever has been.
Exactly. And Stewart?
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely is. But I think the other driver here is that I think this crisis is causing all organizations to look at the way they do everything. Because only it's going to be the agile, lean companies that come out of this and survive. And, so we're actually in Dnata going through a process of what we call reinvent. This crisis is not about just hibernating and waiting for it to get better. It's how can we reinvent ourselves? And so one element of that is looking at of how we can use technology more. And in some ways, there's a kind of a conundrum here, because on the one hand, of course, this whole industry right now is about cash preservation.
Yep.
But on the other hand, this is exactly the time to invest. And if you're lucky enough to have that cash to invest, this is the time to be doing it. Because when those business cases go through finance and stuff, the need for the business to come out leaner is more imperative than ever. Yep. So I think, as much as the hygiene factors, I think that will drive, for example, the move to e-commerce, but also other automation as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. Now, from a technical perspective, I'm sure Stefan and Salem are in the background trying to get hold of Wally, because Wally's dropped off. But what we'll do is we'll continue with you, Stewart. Now, as far as automation, digitization, and also collaboration, when you look at the relationship with the forwarder, how are you seeing that now develop? Because in the old days, or should we say pre-COVID, you had late deliveries, you had last minute deliveries, you had problems there where you haven't got the chance to optimize capacity, direct loading, etc. How are you finding things changing now?
Well, we had conversation. We tried to have sort of adult conversations with our customers. And customers could be, it's the airline or the forwarders, to say, this is going to be really dynamic over the next however long it's going to be, and you almost say that the normal SLA has to go out the window.
Yep.
In return for that, we will give you every commitment that we will. We're not going to say that's an excuse to not deliver. Far from it. But we will. But we're going to have to think on our feet every day, and the amount of freighters which have come in at short notice. Adjusting to the passenger. I call them PACO flights, passenger aircraft carrying cargo only. And passenger flights coming in and then getting cancelled. The dynamics of how we're having to react have been extraordinary. And we have had situations where, an airport which handles 3 freighters a day have had 5 land in half an hour.
Yep.
Now, what has been fantastic has been the understanding of our customers. Perhaps more than I expected. And again, I think it goes to the fact that this is more serious than anything we've ever seen before. Nobody in the world doesn't know what's going on, and so I think there's been a much greater understanding and sense that we're all in this together, and we actually probably need each other more.
Yeah,
I think that sense of needing each other is kind of a new phenomena. I know in a lot of countries, if you watch the normal press, there's I remember at the beginning of COVID and lockdown, there was tales of if you watch the news, there was tales of spontaneous kindness among strangers.
Yeah, and isn't it a shame that it's made to look so unusual?
Yeah, but it's a cliche, but it's brought out the best and the worst of people. Yeah. And you see that in our industry too.
Yeah.
And I'd say the vast majority of our customers and forwarders have been very understanding. We've had a lot of customers saying to us, "No, we've got cash flow problems. We're going to make sure you're paid on time because you're an important part of our business."
Yeah. Yeah, that's music to the ear, Stewart, huh?
Yeah. Not everyone.
Yeah.
But 8 out of 10 have reacted that way.
All right, and Wally, over to you now. We've just been talking about, relationships with the forwarders and, getting a more cohesive understanding of delivery times, close-off times, maybe slot times, etc. What have your experiences been?
Yeah, well, I'm always impressed with the forwarding community that we work with in the U.S. market here, and I think if you think about what's maybe happened to them when you think about moving air freight, the commercial capacity that's available in the marketplace is significantly less now. So but they've been very creative in terms of the routings and things like that they've been able to accept versus maybe what they historically would allow for. And we've tried to have been as flexible as possible when it comes to things like cutoff times and things like, we've adjusted operational hours. We obviously have different flight schedules with a little less capacity. We're loading a lot more cargo on a per flight basis out there. But our facilities, in some cases, will close a little earlier and open a little later. And so we're trying to be very flexible in terms of after hours recovery and those kinds of things. And the forwarding community has been very accepting of that. I think they have looked at this as a partnership, and they need us, they rely on us, and we need them, and we rely on them. And so the partnership has worked well under the circumstances, in my opinion.
Okay, and that's very complimentary towards the Air Forwarders, which gives me a segue into your Air Forwarders Association Recognition Award in 2007, the James Foster Memorial Award.
Yes, yeah, that was
what did you have to do to win that?
And I can't discuss that on camera, Chris. No, that was a tremendous honor. Hey, and I've always thought about that as being something very nice from the Air Forwarders Association for sure. But maybe more importantly, we have through the Air Forwarders Association, Southwest has been recognized several times as being a really high quality carrier, and we're very proud of that as well. At the end of the day, we rely heavily on the forwarding community to be partners with us so that we can all provide services within the supply chain.
Yeah, no, exactly. And Stewart, obviously, and I know your personal stance and also the industries and both your organizations, it's safety. Okay, so without a shadow of a doubt. Now, with the amount of time some people have had and bringing people back on and having them out of work, etc., the recurrent training and new types of training has had to be adapted. How have you accommodated that? And do you think that there have been lessons learned whereby there's better ways of telling people the why rather than just what you have to do, when you have to do it, and how you have to do it?
Yeah, one thing that we've introduced across our network is effectively a return to work retraining program.
Yeah.
And part of it is because the reality is, if some, people know what their job is, they do it day in, day out. But if, to use the flight operations word, recent, if you lose your recency,
yes,
to use the pilot terminology, you just get a little bit rusty, don't you?
Yep.
And so it's so much of it is just about awareness. So we've been deliberately introducing across our network, effectively a quick retraining, and also briefing people about rustiness.
Yeah.
Can't think of a better word, but that's what we call it. So like when you've been away for 3 weeks and you get in your car and you've been in a hire car and you can't remember where you just get rusty, don't you? But I think the other very relevant factor here is one of focus. We're also very conscious that a lot of our staff have, through this period, had other things on their mind.
Exactly. Yeah.
It could be financial problems. It could be health related. The grandparents have fallen ill or something. It could be problems with, the kids have been going crazy in lockdown.
Yeah.
All these kind of things potentially create distraction and lack of focus. So again, there's nothing you can formally train it, but it's just awareness. Make people aware that we realize there's issues. You're in the workplace now. It's almost recognition that there is that risk as people go back off furlough, for example.
100%. Yeah. So going back to the old values of the SMS and human factors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And Wally?
Well, it's interesting when you think about all of maybe to Stewart's example, you think about all of these the underlying stress that everybody is experiencing right now, and it's overwhelming, in a lot of ways. And we just recently had someone join us for a department all hands meeting that we had virtually, obviously, where they talked about that. They talked about employee assistance related opportunities that exist, and just a much deeper explanation of what you may be feeling right now because of all of these things that are kind of in the background or right in front of you that you have to deal with. So that's pretty challenging. The other thing I think is interesting when you think about going back to campus or back in the case of our corporate offices, not only do you kind of have to have a bit of a refresher, but things have changed too. The rules of engagement around the building have changed dramatically. So you not only have to kind of get used to the idea of coming back to work, but you have to come back to work under almost a whole new set of requirements and expectations in terms of the way that you'll social distance and wear masks and what, how you'll interact with people and how meetings will work. And so we're not back on campus yet, but there's a lot of thought going around that. And then you couple all of that with, on maybe the topic of training around now adjusting much of the training that's being done to this virtual world. And that's been working very well, and that's exciting. And so there's all kinds of interesting things kind of going on here in this world, obviously.
Yeah, one of the things with the online training, I've been getting a lot of questions and feedback saying that there's so much online training now, but it's more you've just got to watch it, and by watching it, you've completed it, and then you get a certificate or you get recognition. Whereas I think now more than ever, the online training, there needs to be some very robust testing. And at some point there needs to be a follow-up whereby there's a sign-off for, attitude, engagement, and the way it's practiced. Otherwise we could end up doing so much online training, but it's not as recognized or as accredited as it should be.
Yeah, that's that's certainly a risk. You don't want folks just checking the box. So
Yeah.
the online training is there for a reason. A lot of times it's critically important, or we wouldn't be doing it. And so I think I would commend our kind of our training team at our Southwest University for trying to create training programs that in a virtual world that not only kind of require you to go through the process, but they also require you to demonstrate throughout that you're catching it, that you're
Yeah,
getting it,
exactly.
that you understand the content. So there are some really good ways to offer this now that do really require some level of participation to demonstrate you're getting the content.
Yeah, exactly. And Stuart?
Yeah, Chris, I think all courses, whether online or in the classroom, I think they're only effective if you have that testing at the end of it. And I get your point that you could, online it's quite easy to not listen and you're not taking it in. That happens in the classroom too.
Yeah. Tell me about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. So one last question before I go into just the closing session is, now, as far as sustainability, there's a need for simplicity. So are you guys also using the time for the staff to, review processes and identify the cutouts, as I call them? So, cut this out, cut that out, not necessary, and the legacy waste and projects that we're eating into people's time with no great benefit. So it's making people focus a little bit more on, if you have to identify a list of activities, you've got your critical, which need to be done immediately because it's affecting the business, important because it could affect the business, and recommended just because it would be nice to have. Are you guys exercising such programs?
Sure. Well, you bet absolutely. It kind of goes back to the idea of a plan, the plan that we had in place. So you look at that plan and you think, okay, well, here's, for a number of different reasons, that plan has to change. So we're going to have to be very focused, very deliberate. We're going to have to scale down some of these projects to make sure that we can accomplish them. But then you also think about the fact, for example, with Southwest Airlines, we have recently had a voluntary separation program that we offer that'll reduce the size of the staff down a little bit. And certainly cargo hasn't been immune from that. And so for us, it just adds to the importance of being very focused on the most important things. And otherwise, if you get distracted or you just have too many items, you're just not going to get anything done. And so it's been critically important for us to keep our eye on the ball in terms of the things that we absolutely have to do to ensure we get those things done. And once that's done, then we can move on to the next and decide what's the appropriate next step in the plan.
Exactly. And Stuart?
Yeah, well, to quote my friend from Texas, you bet. Yeah. Exactly the same. I think it's interesting. If you go back to the early days of the crisis, where you're just entirely focused on what you have to do, it's amazing what you can do without.
Yep.
Structure.
Yeah.
And I think that's, moving forward, I think we're learning the lessons from that.
Yep.
And, we have gone through, restructuring in across our business, both in head office and in locations. Because I think we recognize that the industry is going to, who knows the percentage, but the industry is going to be, whether it's 15, 20, 30% smaller for the next 2-3 years to come. And we need to adjust our size and our way of working to reflect that.
Yeah, practical sizing.
Yeah.
100%. Now, gentlemen, as we come to the end of it, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. The first one is, as an individual and a leader and representing your organization, what 3 things would you do collaboratively or from an innovative perspective or a supportive perspective? What would you do for the wider community and the supply chain? So I'll ask you first, Stuart.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I think first thing is making sure we have the cool chain capacity for the vaccine airlift, which will be intense, extreme, and probably last quite a long time. And so, let's not underestimate the amount of work that has to go into preparing for that, to make sure you're ready. Because some of these structural changes to put in more capacity doesn't just happen overnight. It can take several months. So I think that's the first thing I would say. And as I mentioned earlier, we see that's not just that we see as a responsibility to our customers, the airlines, but we also see it as a responsibility to the broader community, in a way, to make sure we get that right.
100%. Number two?
And I think the second one I say is continue to, the steps we've taken towards, I think, a more honest adult dialogue, not only with our staff, with our customers as well, which I think reflects the fact that all of our businesses, the whole industry is facing kind of an existential threat if this carries on. I think there has been a genuine recognition we want to work together, and I think we need to harness that. And I think what it does is it moves what often between handler and airline was a purely transactional relationship. That's not enough anymore.
Agreed. And the third one?
Can't think of the third one. I might pass on to Wally and come back.
So Wally, your three?
Well, the first one is maybe along the lines of what Stewart was sharing there, but in terms of, for us, I think it's important to make sure that we make our capacity available to maybe a broader audience or potential users under the circumstances. It's nice for Southwest Airlines, for example, to offer the schedule that we offer, to have the capacity that we have available. But if we still can't move something that's maybe critically needed in today's world for one reason or another, that's something that we need to address. And so maybe that's kind of like Stewart's comments around the pharmaceutical and the cool chain side of things. We just need to be capable of utilizing or allowing customers to better utilize our capacity. So that's one. I think the second thing is, and we talked about this earlier, it's we have to be committed to the idea of reducing a transaction time in a cargo facility. So whether that's through technology enhancements or processes within the facility itself, or a combination of those things, that's certainly something that we have to be committed to. And then I think finally, I would say, maybe it's more of an internal organizational thing, but and it's around communication. It's also around the discussion that, and we talk about this a lot at Southwest, but cargo's critical. Cargo's critical now, but cargo is critical a year ago as well. And it's critical because we move life-saving commodities on these airplanes every single day. And so it's important for us, one, to I think our team is proud of that fact. I think our team has a lot of passion in that, but it's also important for the team to recognize that sometimes, the model that we have doesn't necessarily solve all of the problems, and we have to be flexible, especially in today's world and going forward. We need to be able to adjust quickly or react quickly to different challenges so that we can meet other critical customer needs that maybe we haven't seen in the past. So those would be maybe three things that I think we'll be focused on.
Okay, and seeing as though you did so well there, three things now that you'd like to get in return, or you'd like to see coming from the supply chain and the community to make your life as effective as possible.
Well, so I'm going to have to go with two on this one as well. And this one will be a little bit of a flip-flop of my first answer, but you know, it would be, I think a lot of shippers maybe miss opportunities to use different types of capacity in the marketplace simply because they are not necessarily flexible about the way something is packed, for example, or the way a shipment might be broken down. So you know, the thing I would ask of shippers out there in the supply chain is that, you know, be flexible when it comes to the different types of capacity that you could actually use versus what you've always done. So there's a lot of folks that kind of press the easy button, I think, in the shipping community that really could do things differently if they were a little bit more flexible in terms of the way they thought about something being moved. So that's one. And really, you know, my second answer is almost along the same lines. It's just think about things in more of a non-traditional approach. So maybe I'm really cheating here and it's really one idea, but think about things in more of a non-traditional way from how you've always done it. Because there are some really good, and I'm not just talking about Southwest Airlines, but there are a lot of good ways to move freight out there that are just outside of maybe what's you think is typical, that could be better than the way you do it today.
Yeah.
And now's the time to think about it.
Yeah. Food for thought. Stewart?
Well, yeah, picking up Wally's point there, I think there's going to be a lot of airlines who, for us, are the customers who are going to be looking at different ways of doing things on cargo and actually on passenger side as well, as they try to adjust to the new model. And I think one of the things we have to do is listen to those needs, help them develop those new products, and make sure that the airline can deliver on them.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's very much a two-way conversation. I like to think that, you know, the airline can say they need to change things, but I like to think we can add value to what that solution might be, as well as delivering it. So, you know, the world is changing. We need to listen.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Good one. Anything else?
Well, and I guess it's related to that, but I think it's also more in terms of our staff as well. It is just is keep up and go further on the communication. I think we have seen the benefit of these mediums of communication, which, to be honest, I think none of us really were exploiting fully before.
Yeah, 100%.
And let's keep doing that. And soon we'll be able to not only do that, but add to that the ability to actually go and meet people.
Which will be unusual in itself, huh?
Yeah, that's right. And for example, you know, I mean, now I have a weekly team meeting with all my head office team. I actually make a point now. We're communicating so much and so regularly that I make a point. The last 10 minutes of that should be fun.
Yeah.
Because we're not seeing each other in person all the time. We're not having the water cooler chat. So let's just make sure we do have some fun. I think that's important, and it's proving to be very, very beneficial for people's well-being.
I think that's an absolute fantastic idea, Stuart. So if you and Wally would like to now sing a song or tell a joke or do a little dance or a bit of improv, it'd be really welcomed.
Stuart, lead off.
I would say that the fun does not usually involve me singing.
No, maybe
well,
you
wouldn't.
I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
Maybe you should give it a little try. Yeah, because that reminds me of when the first person who told me about Zoom, I thought it was Fat Larry's band, the song Zoom from 1983. I was convinced it was. They said, have you heard Zoom? I thought, of course I did. That's 1983.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. I think Wally's too young, Chris, but I know what you're talking about, mate.
Yeah. Fat Larry's band. Wally, look it up. Yeah. Fantastic tune, 1983.
I will check it out.
All right. Listen,
you guys saw I had enough problems with this Zoom. So I'll definitely go check that one out. Maybe
check it out.
You'll enjoy it.
You'll enjoy it. But listen, guys, it's an absolute pleasure. Well done for everything you're doing and for the positivity and the understanding and the leadership. wishing you great success, and hopefully get to see you sometime in the future and see how awkward it will be, whether the handshake, wink, blink, or whatever. So all the best to you both.
Okay.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Wally.
Cheers.
Thank you.